The Horn of Africa juts into the Indian Ocean like a rhino's horn, a crossroads of world trade for centuries. Its ports once connected Africa with Arabia, India, and beyond as ships laden with spices and silks sailed these waters. The Gulf of Aden, gateway to the Suez Canal, is among the world's busiest shipping lanes. Control of these routes shaped empires and global commerce. By the early 2000s, this ancient maritime hub became a hotspot for a new threat: Somali piracy. Pirates in fast skiffs, armed with AK-47s and RPGs, began targeting massive container ships and oil tankers. The world watched in disbelief as small bands seized giant vessels holding crews and cargo for ransom. Somali piracy quickly became a multi-million-dollar criminal enterprise, disrupting trade and forcing ships to reroute thousands of miles. Insurance costs soared and the waters off Somalia became the world's most dangerous shipping lane. The international community soon realized this was a major threat to global stability. But Somali piracy is not a simple story of villains. It's rooted in state collapse, environmental destruction, and poverty. To understand how fishermen became pirates, we must look deeper than headlines. The roots of this crisis lie in Somalia's troubled history. A nation's collapse left its people and coastline exposed. The chaos at sea mirrored the chaos on land, a desperate cry from a forgotten corner of the world. This is the story of how the world's trade was held hostage by the Horn of Africa. Somalia's collapse into chaos was a slow-motion disaster. After independence in 1960, a brief democracy gave way to Siad Barre's military dictatorship. Barre's rule brought stability, but also repression and clan favoritism. By the late 1980s, civil war erupted as clan militias fought the regime and each other. In 1991, Barre was overthrown, but instead of peace, Somalia fractured into territories ruled by warlords. The government, army, and police vanished, leaving only the gun as authority. Famine and conflict devastated the population, and international interventions failed to restore order. With no state to provide security or jobs, survival became a daily struggle. Loyalty shifted from nation to clan, then to family or militia. The collapse was felt most along Somalia's vast coastline, the longest in mainland Africa. With no navy or coast guard, the country's rich fishing grounds were left unprotected. Lawlessness on land created lawlessness at sea. Foreign interests soon exploited Somalia's unguarded waters. This set the stage for a new violent chapter in Somali history. In this environment of anarchy, the seeds of piracy were sown. The world would soon feel the consequences. With no government, Somalia's waters became a free-for-all. International fishing fleets from Europe and Asia descended using destructive methods to strip the seas of fish. Local fishermen with small boats were pushed aside and their livelihoods destroyed. The lawless waters also became a dumping ground for hazardous waste. Toxic barrels washed ashore, poisoning water and causing illness. Coastal communities felt abandoned, watching their resources stolen and their environment ruined. There was no Coast Guard to call, no court for justice. The international community largely ignored these crimes at sea. Anger and desperation grew as families went hungry while foreign trawlers hauled away their wealth. The first response was defensive. Fishermen armed themselves to confront illegal trawlers. They called themselves the Volunteer Coast Guard of Somalia. Their goal was to protect fishing grounds, not hijack ships. They boarded foreign vessels, demanded fines, and forced them to leave. This was vigilante justice, a desperate attempt to restore order. But the line between protection and piracy was about to blur. The self-proclaimed Coast Guards began as defenders, but soon saw the profit in capturing ships. The lure of ransom money transformed their mission. Warlords and businessmen invested in these groups, supplying fast boats, weapons, and technology. What began as local defense became a sophisticated criminal enterprise. Pirates now operated far from shore, using motherships to launch attacks. They swarmed massive vessels, boarded with ladders and weapons, and took crews hostage. Ships were anchored off Somali towns while negotiations began. Ransoms, often delivered in cash, were split among pirates, investors, and local communities. Piracy became the main economic engine for entire regions. The operation was efficient, lucrative, and deeply entrenched. The world's shipping was now at the mercy of Somali pirates. The transformation from Coast Guard to pirate was complete. For young Somali men, piracy offered a way out of poverty. A single hijacking could bring a life-changing sum enough to buy a house, a car, or support a family. Pirates became local celebrities, symbols of success in a failed state. But the reality was harsh weeks at sea and dangerous, cramped conditions facing storms and hunger. Many pirates died at sea, lost to the elements or naval gunfire. Attacking a ship was perilous, crews resisted and warships intervened. Even after a successful hijacking, months of tense negotiations followed. The money, when it came, was often spent quickly on cars parties and caught. Syndicate leaders took the largest share, leaving foot soldiers with less. The cycle was unsustainable. Pirates had to keep risking their lives for another payday. For most, piracy was a high-stakes gamble with fleeting rewards. The risks were constant and the wealth rarely lasted. The pirate's life was a cycle of danger, brief riches and return to poverty. The allure of piracy masked a brutal reality. Behind the headlines, piracy brought immense human suffering. For hostages, a pirate attack meant terror, violence and months or years of captivity. Crews were confined to their own ships, guarded by armed men with scarce food and water. Medical care was non-existent. Illness and injury could be fatal. The psychological toll was severe. Endless days of fear, boredom and uncertainty. Some hostages, like Paul and Rachel Chandler, endured nearly 400 days in captivity. Others, like the crew of the FV Naham 3, were held for years, with some dying before release. Hostages were treated as bargaining chips, their suffering invisible to the world. Even after release, many struggled with trauma and fear. Piracy was not just a crime against property, it was a crime against people. The seafarers were the forgotten victims, scarred for life. Their ordeal highlighted the true cost of piracy. The fight against piracy was about more than trade. It was about defending human dignity. The scars of captivity lingered long after the ransoms were paid. The human cost was incalculable. As piracy escalated, the world responded with force. In 2008, the UN authorized international navies to enter Somali waters. A multinational task force formed. EU, NATO, US, China, Russia, and more sent warships. Their mission: patrol the vast Gulf of Aden, escort vulnerable ships, and deter attacks. Warships raced to intervene during pirate assaults, making piracy far riskier. Navies began disrupting pirate operations before attacks could launch, destroying motherships and skiffs. Pirates were often disarmed and released, but their business model was broken. Shipping companies adopted new defenses: razor wire, fire hoses, safe rooms, and armed guards. These layers of protection turned the tide. The combination of naval patrols and industry self-defense made hijackings far less likely. The era of easy piracy was ending. The world's response was unprecedented and effective. The pirates' reign was coming to an end. Fighting pirates at sea was only half the battle. Bringing them to justice was just as crucial. Initially, navies often caught and released pirates, as few countries wanted to prosecute crimes committed far from home. This revolving door allowed pirates to return to sea. To close the loophole, regional countries like Kenya and the Seychelles agreed to prosecute pirates with international support. Hundreds were tried and jailed, sending a clear message: piracy would not go unpunished. Trials were complex, involving evidence from the high seas and international crews. Courts in over 20 countries held piracy trials, reinforcing the rule of law. Inside Somalia, anti-piracy courts and prisons were established in Puntland and Somaliland. The goal for Somalia to eventually police its own waters and enforce its own laws. Legal action dismantled pirate networks and restored order. The fight against piracy was as much about justice as it was about security. The world showed that impunity for piracy was over. The legal battle was slow, but essential. By 2013, piracy off Somalia had collapsed. Attacks dropped from dozens a year to almost none. The pirate business model was broken. Risks were too high, rewards too uncertain. Pirate kingpins turned to other crimes. Coastal towns grew quiet. Many former pirates ended up in prison, some died at sea, others tried to rebuild their lives. Some used ransom money to start businesses, others returned to poverty. The end of piracy brought both relief and hardship to coastal communities. The flow of ransom money stopped, leaving a gap in local economies. Aid organizations stepped in, offering training and alternative livelihoods. But the root problems, poverty, unemployment, weak governance, remained. The skills and desperation that fueled piracy still exist. The peace is fragile and the future uncertain. The question remains: is piracy truly gone or just dormant? The victory over Somali piracy is fragile. The root causes, poverty, weak government, and youth unemployment, persist. As long as these remain, the temptation for piracy endures. Illegal fishing and waste dumping continue, reviving old grievances. With fewer naval patrols, foreign trawlers are returning and local anger is rising. If communities feel exploited again, the cycle could restart. The international naval presence has scaled back, raising fears of resurgence. A few successful attacks could quickly revive large-scale piracy. Continued vigilance is essential for regional security. The real solution lies on land, building a stable, prosperous Somalia. Only a functioning government and economy can end the threat for good. Until then, the waters off the Horn of Africa remain at risk. The ghost of piracy still haunts the world's most vital shipping lane.